When a public health threat pops up, it can feel like total chaos. But behind the scenes, there's actually this highly structured process, and it's all designed to protect us. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the official playbook that turns all that uncertainty into real, concrete action. Let's dive in. So picture this. You're scrolling through your social media feed, and suddenly there it is, this terrifying rumor about some new disease. Panic starts to bubble up, right? Well, for public health officials, that's a signal. That's the starting gun for a race against time. And believe me, what happens next is anything but random. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the basics of risk management. Then we'll dive into that intense initial investigation, look at the critical questions they have to ask, tackle the massive challenge of public communication, and finally, see why this whole thing is a continuous cycle. Okay, so first things first. What exactly is risk management? The easiest way to think about it is as the official playbook that guides every single decision when our health is on the line. At its heart, it's a formal process for making some really tough calls. It's all about spotting risks to our health, our safety, and the environment, and then figuring out the absolute best way to control them to keep us all safe. And you gotta understand, this is an incredibly broad idea. We're not just talking about pandemics here. This is the science behind cleaning up toxic spills, making sure our air and water are clean, stopping the spread of diseases, and even making sure the products you buy are safe to use. It's everywhere. And the whole process follows this really clear 5-step cycle. First, you identify a potential problem. Then, you analyze it, evaluate how serious the risk is, take action, and finally, you review everything that happens so you can learn for the next time. And that last step, it's absolutely crucial. This whole cycle is the backbone of everything we're about to talk about. So, let's see how this plays out in what is probably the most critical phase. The rapid risk assessment. This is all the detective work that has to happen in the first 48 hours. In those first few hours, the team basically becomes a squad of detectives. It's their job to sift through all the noise, gather every clue they can find, and, most importantly, figure out what's a real threat versus what's just a rumor that's spreading like wildfire. And get this, they are on a ridiculously tight deadline. The moment a potential threat gets flagged, the clock starts ticking. They have just 24 to 48 hours to produce their initial assessment. The pressure is just immense because every decision that follows is going to be based on this early work. But don't mistake speed for sloppiness. A good assessment has to be transparent, it has to be based on the best science they have at that moment, and has to be flexible. And here's the part that might surprise you. They have to be crystal clear about what they don't know. Documenting all the uncertainties and assumptions is absolutely key for building trust. So, how in the world do they do it? Well, it really all comes down to asking the right questions so they can accurately size up the threat. The whole investigation is guided by these 3 huge questions. First, who is most at risk here? Second, how are people actually being exposed to this thing? And finally, the when, why, and how. Basically, what are the mechanics of how this threat could impact everybody? And this really shows you that the assessment is a 2-sided coin. On one side, they're looking at the hazard itself. How does it spread? How dangerous is it? But on the other side, they have to assess the context. And that includes everything from the physical environment to cultural beliefs, and even how much the media is talking about it, because a threat never, ever exists in a vacuum. Okay, so once they have an assessment, that's when the next monumental task begins, communicating with the public. And let me tell you, this is about so much more than just putting out a press release with the facts. The official term is risk communication, and this definition is so important. It's an open, two-way exchange. See, the goal isn't just to talk at people. It's about creating a real dialogue that empowers everyone to make informed decisions and take steps to protect themselves. So to be super clear, risk communication is not just educating the public or talking to people. It's not a one-way street. It is a genuine exchange. It is about empowering people, and it is about building the trust that you absolutely have to have in a crisis. And because of that, the goals are deeply human-centered. It's about acknowledging that people are going to have emotional responses, fear, anger, confusion, and communicating with real compassion. The whole point is to shut down rumors, encourage helpful actions, and give people the power to protect themselves and their families. Now, all of this gets 1,000 times harder because of what we call the infodemic. We're just drowning in information, right? Some of it's accurate, some of it's not. And that makes it a huge challenge for people to find a trustworthy voice right when they need it most. especially now with so-called citizen journalism all over social media. So, how do officials cut through all that noise? Well, they tailor their strategy based on two things: the actual level of the hazard and the level of public concern. Take a look at this. If a hazard is high, but people aren't worried yet, think early warnings about a new virus. The strategy is precaution advocacy. The message is basically, watch out. But what if the hazard is low, but people are freaking out? Say, a small chemical spill that sounds scary, but is totally contained. The goal is outrage management. You can't just say, calm down. You have to transparently explain why the risk is low. And when both the hazard and the concern are sky high, that's crisis communication. That's the we'll get through this together approach. And this brings us to our final, really important point. You have to understand that risk management isn't a one-and-done thing. It's a continuous, never-ending cycle of protection. And success in this cycle really depends on these core principles: being proactive with communication, actually listening to what people are worried about, being honest and open, even about what you don't know, giving people meaningful things they can do. These are the things that build and maintain public trust for the long haul. So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. In our world of instant information and misinformation, what do you think has become the bigger challenge for public health officials? Managing the actual risk itself, or managing the information and the stories swirling around it?